Please note, this episode may be a trigger for some as we discuss a personal journey of failed IVF and miscarriage. So please, be kind to yourself and proceed with caution.
So, yeah, let's start from the beginning in that case. So could you explain a little bit about how you've learned about tapping and what it means to you?
Okay. Well, how did I learn about tapping? I actually trained originally to be a hypnotherapist, and hypnotherapy and NLP and life coaching, and that was in 2004. And I'm just realising I'm about to be telling triggering stuff here. Potentially triggering stuff. Is that all right? Or should I? Yeah, that's okay. All right.
Yeah, that's okay. We can put a warning onto the episode. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. So I think was I pregnant for the first time? I don't remember. Might have been more than the first time. No, I think it was the second or third time. And I wasn't feeling very well. I was actually pregnant for the longest time on that occasion, and I wasn't feeling very well. And I went to see my hypnotherapist to help. She was actually my supervisor in my training. And I didn't know anything about tapping at that point. And when I went to see her, she actually did tapping with me. And I used that a lot. And then when I had a miscarriage, I used it a huge amount. And I really wasn't very well at that point. And then as I got better, I started to train in tapping. So tapping is emotional freedom techniques. And the more I used it and the more I trained in it, the more I actually swapped over from hypnotherapy to EFT, because it just seemed to be the better tool for the job usually. So that's where it actually started. So I'm actually got to the point where I've had 12 miscarriages, but it feels as if I've had none because I have tapped so much. I've used it so much over the years. And so tapping emotional freedom techniques changes the way you feel, in a nutshell. So it's a self-help tool which you can use on yourself anytime you want to change the way you feel. And you can use it for emotional things. You can use it to deal with unpleasant events that have happened in the past so they don't hurt anymore. You can use it to assist your body in healing. You can deal with trauma. You can change your emotions, your beliefs, huge amount of stuff. So I've been a practitioner since 2005, basically. And I'm a general practitioner helping people be happy, effective and well, but I also specialise in miscarriage support and childlessness support, helping people to be happy with that.
Wow, it's an incredibly powerful tool, isn't it?
It's staggering. It really, really, yeah, I can remember the first time that I discovered that I could take the pain away from an upsetting memory. And that was the most extraordinary experience. And as soon as I discovered I could do that without crying, actually, it wasn't a very pleasant process, but I did that on my own. I took the pain away from I was remembering my baby's funeral, and I took the pain away from that. And knowing that I could do that was just astonishing. So then I systematically started taking the pain away from all of these emotions, all of these memories. And so it's now as if I'm watching it on television. So it's over there. It's never going to be something nice to watch. It's not nice to watch, but it doesn't hurt anymore. And so it's like it's no longer kind of right in my face. It's over there. It's kind of almost like it happened to somebody else. Very, very, very powerful. Extremely useful for trauma and unpleasant events and all that kind of stuff.
What's the theory behind it, Rosalind? So you say it's like watching a telly far away.
Well, once I've done it, once you've tapped on a memory, that's what it becomes like. It sort of becomes distant, so it becomes dissociated. So you're no longer kind of right in it. So the theory is that there's been research published at the end of March this year, actually, which shows that when we tap, it reduces the cortisol in the body. So apparently, if you were just to leave somebody, cortisol the stress hormone can just rise 2%. It rises if you do nothing. If you just do sort of conventional sort of talking therapy, you reduce cortisol by 19%, and if you tap, you reduce it by 43%. So the theory is that it's actually impacting the amygdala and the hippocampus, the parts of the brain which are to do with anxiety and fear. So somehow when we tap, it soothes this part of the brain. So we're tapping on energy meridian points, the end points. So those are the ones which you use in acupuncture and acupressure. And we're also combining it with sort of modern psychology as well at the same time. So it's a kind of combination of both, really. So we're definitely soothing the parts of the brain to do with anxiety and fear.
Wow.
It's strange because it's only today when I sprung on Vicky that we're doing a podcast today. She said, "Oh, what about?" And I explained that Rosalind was coming on and showing and explaining about the tapping, and she goes, "Oh yeah, Audrey used to do that." Now Audrey was the psychologist that we used to go to for many years, and so I totally understand where you're coming from, Rosalind, because the way that just the way that I've perceived it is it desensitizes. You know, so like we always say, it's a management tool. You'll never forget trauma, but it allows you to soothe or desensitize, to manage that trauma or grief. So I was and now I'm starting to remember. Of course, she used it in a different way, but I can now see it and remember it.
Yeah, it is really extraordinary that, I mean, my own personal belief is that if you do enough of it, and if you, particularly if somebody who knows what they're doing kind of supports you in doing it, if you do enough of it, you can change the way you feel about anything. You really, really can. Now, you're not necessarily going to do that overnight, but then often these things didn't occur overnight. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like there's can be years and years worth of stuff that we might be tapping on and removing, but it is finite. Usually, the stuff that happened is finite, and if you keep gently working on it, and there are ways of doing it. We have what we call tearless trauma, where you can actually work on traumatic events without being re-trauma. Well, for sure, we're very, very careful that we make sure you're not re-traumatized. That's one of the key things. But this can be used with post-traumatic stress, and it is used. They've done lots and lots of work in America with highly traumatized war veterans very effectively. And there's lots of research that shows that people go from having really high markers for PTSD, post-traumatic stress, to eventually being the same as the general population. So they are no longer, and that's permanent. It doesn't come back. So it's very effective. And you can also use it very simply at home as a self-help tool as well.
I've used it to help me get over phobias, so needle phobias and things. And I won't go into too much detail about that because that in itself can upset people. But I can remember just feeling, and it was the oddest experience that I couldn't necessarily explain, but it was if someone had lifted a great weight off my shoulder and I actually could stand up a bit taller because of it.
Yes.
And I couldn't explain it to you, but it just meant that it literally just went. And I spent absolutely years trying to get through this particular issue because there was a certain thing that triggered that, that meant I simply couldn't do the most basic things of having a blood test, and then actually ultimately I couldn't do IVF, so I had to have some way through that in order to be able to try the things that I needed to try to get through it. It was just extraordinary. I can't explain it, but actually what you're saying, having a self-help tool, it is there. So actually whenever I've gone back to the surgeries I have to do, and I think okay, no, this is fine, I can deal with this because I have the tools to do that. And also you have the experience in your head, you remember that experience that you went through, and that in itself is a different association to something.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I found it very personally very, very helpful.
I tap whenever I go to the dentist. Tap on my hands. And the dentist, no dentist has ever yet commented. I think they must be familiar with it, and I'm sure they're very grateful that their patients are doing whatever they can to kind of calm down their own own emotions. I've got to the point where I think this is remarkable, and it's such a blessing that my mind can rest on anything that's happened in the past without it hurting. And any time that anything comes up that does hurt, when I think about it, then I tap on it till it goes back to the point where my mind can rest on it without it hurting. And that is just tremendously calming, peaceful. That provides real just space and a real sort of gentleness, and it's so possible. I just wish everybody knew that that's possible, that we can. It's not even difficult, actually. It's not difficult, it's not particularly time consuming. It's just a particular way of approaching it, and it's just such a valuable thing.
I think it's also not changing anyone's narrative as well. You can still own who you are and your experiences, but actually you can speak about them
Yes.
In a way that makes you feel perhaps a little bit more empowered about that, I think, as well. You can own your story a bit better, and that's only got to be a good thing at the end of the day. So,
well, that's one of the lovely things about EFT is that it just generally changes, but you don't force it, you don't necessarily suggest it. It's just a sort of it's kind of an absence of upset, rather than there's no kind of putting positive thinking over the top at all. It's just a natural evolution of when it doesn't hurt so much, the kind of happiness comes up.
I'm sorry, I've not come across it before. People have talked about it, so I'm still. So is it? It's not hypnosis then. So
no, it's not hypnosis.
What is it? How would you describe it?
Well, what we're actually doing is we are tapping on the ends of energy meridian points. I don't know if you've ever seen an acupuncture map where they've got energy meridians, you've got lines going all over the body, running all the way down the body. You don't have to believe in any of this. It works whether you believe in it or not. You don't have to believe you've got energy meridians or not. And some of my favourite tapping incidences have been with people who don't believe it at all, but they're in pain, and we tap and they go, oh, feel better. So that's always really nice. So what we're doing is we're tapping lightly with the fingertips on the ends of these energy meridian points. And it seems to be that this sends calming, soothing signals to the parts of the brain associated with fear, anxiety, stress, pain, the amygdala, the hippocampus. And it balances the energy system. Now, you don't have to believe that it's balancing the energy system. It just seems to have this impact. So what happens is that emotions get released. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. So it's not that we don't feel emotions, it's that they flow. They don't get stuck, they get released. Your energy system is soothed, calmed, and you come back into balance. So that's what's going on.
Oh, so is that when you sort of saying it feels like you're looking at a telly at something that was upsetting?
Yes.
It's kind of removed that emotion that you've had somewhere in your body.
Absolutely. So that is exactly what you can do with stressful events, memories, images, feelings. At the beginning, it can be very painful. We often rate it on a scale of 0 to 10, and it can be 8 or 10 or 25 out of 10 before you start. It's very, very painful. And sometimes it doesn't have to be, but you can work like that. And then the emotions come down, they come down, they come down until they may have gone altogether or be very, very low. And then it no longer, sometimes it doesn't feel literally as if you're looking out of your own eyes. It becomes distance, but it doesn't have to do that. But the bottom line is it no longer hurts. The emotional pain goes. It's completely possible to do that.
Wow.
And that isn't, as I say, it's not difficult, and it's not even necessarily very time consuming either.
No.
Something is with EFT which we call the personal peace procedure. And the personal peace procedure involves making a list of all the things which, when you think about them, that have happened in your life, still have some unpleasant emotional charge. Then you just tap through them one by one, and it all goes. And so how you feel once you've cleared your peace list is just very, very different. All sorts of things start to function better in your mind, in your sort of general emotional well-being, and in your body often. Illnesses and things often, ease, physical symptoms ease. There's quite often an emotional component when people are in pain, particularly if somebody's in pain long after whatever it was that caused it has healed, but they're still in pain. Often there are emotional components there, and we can tap and release that, and the pain can reduce or disappear. That's very, very common.
I was going to say there's a movement, isn't there, at the moment with sort of counselling and the mind-body connection. So it sounds as though EFT has quite a lot going on in that field as well.
Absolutely, yes, most definitely. The man who invented EFT, Gary Craig, used to have a phrase, try it on everything, which is a really good approach. Try it on everything. What's got to lose? You really might gain a huge amount. And it's certainly a very interesting, kind of fun approach. Try it on everything. Got nothing to lose. If in doubt, tap. That's my motto.
Wow, so it could do a bit of everything then, really. Anything sort of,
Absolutely.
anything that's been sort of hanging around for a while, because you mentioned obviously your miscarriages, but also Berenice mentioned needles. So
Yeah,
it does a
absolutely.
bit of everything,
Yeah.
really, then.
Fears, phobias, disempowering beliefs, memories in particular. You can deal with stuff that's causing you upset on a day-to-day basis, things that you're worried about. You can deal with any event before, during, or after. So if you're worried about it beforehand, you can tap on that. If you're there, you can tap while you're there, which can calm and soothe your emotions, and then you can tap afterwards to kind of take it out of your emotional system so that it's not hanging around. Very, very effective.
Wow. I mean, it's kind of why we're doing today, isn't it? We're talking about doing something practical and positive for people that are struggling with what's going on at the moment. So it can be used for that too.
Absolutely. So there are two main ways of tapping. Well, actually, there's lots of different ways of tapping, but there's two that I kind of talk about. One is formal EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and we'll do some of that together. But, well, let me say but. I also teach a simplified version, which is simple energy techniques, and I just call it simple tapping. And that is very, very, very easy. You just tap or rub or hold any of these points in any order, and that's all you do. You don't need to say any words. You don't need to focus on anything. You can if you want to, but you really don't need to. And what I've discovered is that when people do simple tapping, there's nothing you can get wrong. You don't need to worry about, am I tapping on the right points? Am I using the right words? I don't know what to say. I don't necessarily want to put a special time aside to do this. I don't even want to think about what's going on. But if you do the simple tapping, and you can do that whilst you're doing other things, whilst you're watching television, if you're taking your dog for a walk, if you're on public transport, if you're talking to somebody, you can do this very surreptitiously. You can do it on your hands, and I've got videos that show you how to do all of this. So you can be doing it secretly. If you just do the simple tapping throughout the day, that has a huge impact. So although we can do some general EFT together, and EFT is wonderful, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do anything like as complicated as that in order to feel so much better. So I've discovered that since I've been teaching people simple tapping, they use it way, 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 way more. So that's that. And actually, I use probably more simple tapping myself than I do EFT. Sometimes EFT is lovely, but you don't have to get tangled up in, I don't know if I'm doing this right and I don't know what to say. Another way of using EFT very easily is to tap along with other people's videos. And there are lots of those. There are lots of YouTube channels. Brad Yates has he's got hundreds and hundreds of videos, and I really like those on all sorts of different topics. If you look him up on YouTube, you just tap along with him on whatever the topic is and you feel better. It's as simple as that.
Good. I was going to say, I like the idea of sitting somewhere without having to sort of say a load of words so people don't think, what are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do it silently in your head. If you're watching a video, you can always just be doing it. So you can even just be doing it very gently on your fingertips, rubbing and squeezing, any of these. So all of this can be very, very subtle. People don't know that you're doing it. So yeah, lots of different ways of doing that. And as I say, I've got videos which show you all of this, because I'm aware that if people are listening to this instead of seeing it, you don't have points that I'm showing, but we can make sure that you have all that information.
Fabulous.
Brilliant.
That's great, Sarah, because you've asked the questions, I think, that people who don't necessarily know about it.
That's because I don't know about it.
That's true, yeah, that's also true, yeah.
Because I'm nosy.
Right. But it's interesting because it kind of parallels quite nicely with, I think, your work in counselling and as well. So it's interesting to hear your point of view on that too. Yeah.
Interestingly, how people describe this is changing all the time. So I looked up one of the latest descriptions.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what they're saying, shall I? So what they're saying is tapping with the fingertips on specific meridian endpoints of the body, while focusing on negative emotions or physical sensations, helps to calm the nervous system, rewire the brain to respond in healthier ways, and restore the body's balance of energy. So that's kind of one of the latest ways of describing it.
That's very powerful and very lovely. That's really good, isn't it?
Rewire the brain to respond in healthier ways, I think sums it up really.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very positive affirmation. Great. So shall we start walking through something with
Yes,
this?
so should we do some?
Good.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
very
fine.
good.
Okay.
So,
I'll sit up.
one of the first things to say is, in a time of coronavirus, we are potentially tapping on our faces. You don't have to tap on your face, but today we're going to tap on your face. So you want to make sure you've washed your hands before you do this, and probably wash your hands afterwards. Okay? Does everybody feel their hands are okay in these circumstances? Okay, good. So I'm going to introduce the tapping points to you now, and I'm going to describe them as well. But you don't need to try and worry about remembering these, because I've got 2 little videos that explain all of this. So anytime you want to top up, you can go back to that. So the first tapping point is on the side of your hand. So it's below your little finger or your pinky, on the squishy bit on the side of your hand. And we're just going to tap that. And you can swap hands at any point. So I'm tapping at the speed of tap, 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 tap. You can go faster, tap, 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 or slower. And you can swap hands at any point. So it's the squishy bit below your little finger or pinky on the side of your hand. Okay? So that's the side of the hand point. So the next one is at the beginning of your eyebrow above your nose. So you can tap on either side, doesn't matter, you can swap hands at any point. So we're tapping at the beginning of the eyebrow above your nose, and again I'm going tap, 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 tap with my fingers, fingertips. So the next point is on the side of your eye, it's on the bone on the outside edge of your eye. And you can tap around your glasses if you want to. Ooh, we've all got glasses on, I just realised that. So you can tap around there. And the next one is below your eye, on the bone there, about an inch below your pupil. So we're tapping there, again, tap, 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 tap with your fingertips. And again, you can use either side of the body. You can swap at any point. It doesn't matter which hand you use. The next one is underneath your nose. Tap, 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 tap. Next one is underneath your mouth. Tap, tap, tap on your chin there. The next one is on the ends of your collarbones. So most people can feel these, not everybody can. There's kind of knobbly bits. It's about where a man would knot his tie. So you can tap on one side or both. You can make a loose fist like that if you want to. So just gently tapping. And you may be able to hear the sound of me tapping. It's quite loud. Sometimes people say, "Is that you?" I used to work with people on the telephone before we did it on the internet. They say, "Can I hear you tapping?" So the next one is underneath your arm. So for a woman, it's in the middle of your bra strap. For a man, it's a palm's width underneath your arm on the side of your body. So in the middle of your bra strap, underneath your arm. Okay. And again, you can tap on either side. This isn't going to say anything to people who are listening, but we call this the kind of monkey point for children. And then the last one is on the top of your head. And we're going to move our hands around just a little bit so that we get both sides of the brain at once. Okay, great. And so let's pause and take a deep breath. Now, there are also lots of hand points, but I don't think I'm going to try and describe those because all gets a bit complicated. I think the best way to do that is to look at that on a video or on a picture. And if you have anything to drink, help yourself to something to drink because this can make you thirsty. Okay, so in a moment we're going to do some tapping together. And I'm going to invite you to copy me, to repeat what I say, and to tap where I tap. Now, to begin with, I'm going to be talking about negative things that we might be feeling, thoughts we might be having. And then as we tap together, we will move towards positives at the end. So don't worry, we're not just going to be stuck in the negatives. And the idea is that we're giving the negative stuff permission to be there. We're not sweeping it away, we're not denying it, we're not ignoring it, we're giving it permission to be there, and we're balancing it with some positive things at the same time. And don't worry if the words that I say don't completely match how you're feeling. It's okay to say them anyway because your subconscious mind will take what it needs and it will match it across. It will map it across to whatever it is you're actually thinking and feeling. So don't worry too much if the words don't exactly match. And this is just a standard thing that I always say and everybody says, which is just to ask you to take full responsibility for your own physical and emotional well-being as we tap. it's worth mentioning, this is an understatement, you may be feeling quite emotional at the moment. There are a lot of emotions going on for this community as a whole, and also because we're under lockdown. So you put those two together, there's a lot of emotions. So as we tap, you might find that you feel emotional. And what I would suggest is that you keep tapping, even if you do find that you feel a little bit emotional, because as we tap, it can help the emotions to flow and to be released. So it can feel a bit counterintuitive. It can feel like, oh, I feel emotional now, I should stop. But actually what we'd recommend is that you keep tapping, because it will help it to pass faster and help to kind of release it. Okay, so I think we're ready to tap. Do any of you have any questions before we begin?
No, I think that's absolutely fine.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Great. That's okay, very good. So I'm inviting you to copy me and to repeat what I say and to tap where I tap. So we're beginning off by tapping on the karate chop point on the side of your hand. And so I'm going to speak, and then I'll leave a gap, and you can speak at home just repeating what I'm saying. So tapping on the karate chop point, tap, 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 tap. Even though all of this is going on, I am okay. Even if I don't feel okay. Even though these are very strange times. I know I'm trying my best, even if it doesn't feel good enough. Even though all of this is going on, I can have compassion for everything that I'm going through. So now we're going to tap round. So tapping at the beginning of your eyebrow, all of this is going on. Side of your eye, these are very strange times. Under your eye, all of this is going on. Under your nose, I never imagined I'd be dealing with this. Under your mouth, all of this is going on. On your collarbone, and it can be quite hard to deal with. Under your arm, all of this is going on. Top of your head, these are very strange times. Okay, let's pause and take a deep breath. And let's keep tapping. So tapping on the karate chop point on the side of your hand. Even though I might be feeling stressed, I am okay. Even if I don't feel okay. Even though I might have lots of emotions, I know that I am trying my best. Even if that doesn't feel good enough. Even though I might be feeling stressed, I am okay. Okay, tapping round, beginning of your eyebrow, feeling stressed. Side of your eye, maybe I have lots of emotions. Under your eye, feeling stressed. Under your nose, this is lots to deal with. On your chin, all of these emotions. On your collarbone, everything that I'm dealing with. Under your arm, might be feeling stressed. Top of your head, all of these emotions. Okay, let's pause and take another deep breath. And let's keep tapping on the karate chop point on the side of your hand. Even though maybe I've had enough by now, I am okay. Even though this is a lot to deal with, I know I'm trying my best. Even if that doesn't feel good enough. Even though maybe I'd like this to stop now, I can take good care of myself. And I am okay. Tapping round, eyebrow point. Maybe I've had enough by now. Side of your eye. This has been going on a long time. Under your eye. This is a lot to deal with. Under your nose. Maybe I'd like it to stop now. Under your mouth. And I am okay. On your collarbone. I'm dealing with it. Under your arm. Even though it's been going on for a long time. Top of your head. And I can take good care of myself. Okay, let's pause and take another deep breath. And let's keep tapping. So tapping on the karate chop point on the side of your hand. Even though all of this is going on, I choose to take kind and gentle care of myself. Even though this is a lot to deal with, I choose to take it moment by moment. And I can do it. Even though it feels like this is going on for a long time, I'm open to the possibility that I can be peaceful and know that this will pass. Tapping round on the beginning of your eyebrow, all of this has been going on. Side of your eye, and I choose to take kind and gentle care of myself. Underneath your eye, this is a lot to deal with. Under your nose, and I can take it moment by moment. Under your mouth, it feels like it's been going on for a long time. On your collarbone, and I'm open to the possibility underneath your arm that I can be peaceful. Top of your head, and know that this will pass. Let's take another deep breath. And tapping on the side of your hand, even though these are strange times, I can be kind and gentle with myself. Even though all of this is going on, I can tap and take it step by step. Even though all of this is happening, I can lean into the support that I do have. Tapping round, eyebrow point. I can be kind and gentle with myself. Side of your eye, I can tap and I can take it step by step. Underneath your eye, I can lean into the support that I do have. Underneath your nose, I can be kind and gentle with myself. Under your mouth, I can have compassion for all that I'm going through. On your collarbone, I can take it step by step. Underneath your arm, I can tap and I can soothe myself. Top of your head, and I can lean into the support that I do have. And let's keep tapping round, eyebrow point. This will pass eventually. Side of your eye, I can take it moment by moment. Under your eye, I can be kind and gentle with myself. Under your nose, I'm open to the possibility. Under your mouth, that I can be peaceful. On your collarbone, I can know that this will pass. Underneath your arm, I'm okay. Top of your head, and all is well. Okay, let's take another deep breath. Okay, well, I hope you're feeling a little bit more peaceful now than you were before we started. How are you feeling?
Much calmer, an awful lot calmer than I was. Yeah, I do actually. I don't. Yeah, I feel calmer. Yeah, quite peaceful about it. I think I went to bed last night feeling again slightly. I think as people do, caught the end of the news. Shouldn't have watched the end of the news. It's never a good thing to do that. And yeah, it goes to bed feeling I don't know, you know. So it's, you know, and that lingers, I think, overnight. You can't help but have that lingering in your dreams and your thoughts, and when you wake up, it's kind of like the first thing we will think. Well, many of us, I think of. So yeah, I feel a lot better for that. It's very, very calming. Thank you.
Good. I'm very glad. That's really nice to hear. That's good. Great. So definitely, if you're going to watch the news, tap whilst you're watching the news. Preferably don't watch the news, but if you're going to watch the news, tap whilst.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, because sometimes you feel compelled that you have to watch it.
Yeah,
because if you haven't seen it, but actually having something to do whilst you're watching it to kind of feel a little bit more calmer about that. That's a really valuable point. Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
That's okay. You're very welcome. Another thing I would say, certainly for people who have access to the BBC, is that one way to stay up to date without being so freaked out is to watch the little videos they put out afterwards when they've synthesized. This is what you need to know. We are doing our best not to freak you out. We are doing our best to be balanced and calm. And it's not the same as the kind of spontaneous reaction that goes on and on and on and on in the live news. So that can be one way of, like, if you do feel like you need to watch something, you could just stop watching the news and then watch those little kind of brief, condensed, carefully considered.
Yes. Yeah, they're really good. Yeah, there's a number of news outlets that are doing that, and I think that's actually a really good point. Don't watch the stuff, the big stuff. Watch little snippets as you can manage it.
I think so, because apart from anything else, they're just speculating, they're talking, they're going over and over and over again, and it's not the same kind of calm, actually, what we want to leave people with stuff that happens in quite the same way, I don't think so.
Absolutely. Yes. How are you two feeling, Sarah, Michael?
I'm feeling really chilled out now, actually. I'm ready for a snooze. I was going to ask you, actually, Rosalind, because obviously the last episode we did was about, it was predominantly about people living on their own and the kind of the anxiety and the isolation. Could tapping help with that, or are there any videos that you've done around that at all?
Well, there are loads. I haven't done one specifically about isolation or anxiety, but there are loads of anxiety ones. The Tapping Solution is one of the biggest websites, and they have a number of videos about anxiety. They have an app which you can have on your phone, and there are a number of tap-along videos about anxiety in there. Brad Yates has got a number of videos about tapping to do with anxiety. So yes, there are lots of videos that exist out there. If you put into Google or whichever tapping, and then whatever your issue is, it will show you. So if you put tapping in and the two things, it'll come up. So yes, I would most definitely recommend that kind of thing.
Lovely, thanks. How about you, Michael?
Well, actually, I was a little bit fidgety before we started. I'll admit I was I don't think you would use anxious, but you know, I was just a little bit unsettled, and I'm not fidgeting. I just feel, you know, just like a little. It's like a sigh that you know, when you have one of those big sighs and you just feel relaxed, and that's how I feel right now.
That's great. So as I say, you can tap with the videos, but you can also just do the simple tapping on your body as often as you like. So people who have entered the simple tapping recommend accumulating a minimum of 10 minutes per day throughout the day, but you can do way more than that. You can easily accumulate an hour if you're doing it like I do it when I'm having breakfast, when I'm walking the dog, when I'm watching telly, when I'm waiting for my computer to do something, if I'm on the telephone, in the shower, all sorts of places. If you just tap whilst you're doing other things, your body will be responding in the way that you've just described. So probably what we've done is release some of the cortisol that was in your system,
release some of the
Actually,
stress hormone, and
so
you feel calmer.
So what I'm going to do, I've got a big drive ahead of me tomorrow. I've got to go down to Victoria for work, so I'll be socially cocooned in my car, which is fine. But I've got 9.5 hours of travel on the road, so I'm going to take you up on that, Rosalind. I'm going to see how much I can accumulate over the day.
Okay, very good. Great, very good. So if you're in stationary traffic, you can always tap with your hand on the steering wheel. And you can also do the finger points as well against the steering wheel if you're in stationary traffic. Yep. So you notice I'm not endorsing tapping whilst you drive. Couldn't possibly do that.
I could just imagine the person I'm overtaking, and I'm just, tapping my head.
Both hands off the steering wheel, doing your head.
That's right. But having said that, certainly in this country, we do spend a lot of time stuck in stationary traffic, so that's a good opportunity to tap, definitely.
Yeah, I'm actually, not that I was sceptical, it's just that I've not heard of it, and you sort of think, well, how does tapping, but I do feel a lot, really sort of chilled.
Well, there's a direct correlation between the more tapping you do, the better you feel, without a doubt. There's no question. You can't over tap, you can't overdo it.
Yeah.
As I was saying earlier, for you, Sarah, having watched Vicky go through a lot of therapy, and there was both tapping and EMDR, and a lot of people will just sort of, they will be skeptical, but it's not something that happens overnight. It's not, it's not the cure all that you do it once and it takes a long time. But I've seen it work. I really have.
Yes, the EMDR is very powerful as well. I've got an analogy for this. If you imagine that we are, in this country we'd call it a water butt, but I think elsewhere people call it a rain barrel. So if you imagine that you are a water butt, a rain barrel, and when you're born it's empty, and then as unpleasant things happen during your life, your rain barrel gets more and more full of water. And we can get to the point where, and a lot of people are at this point right now, it's full to brimming, it's full to the very, very top. And one more drop of water is all it takes for just the skin to break, the water pressure, and the water rolls over the edge. And that can be disproportionate to what actually happens, our emotional reactions. And so anytime you tap, it's like emptying some of that water out of your rain barrel. And then that gives you capacity for a lot more to come in before you have that same reaction. But as you said, Michael, the rain barrel kind of fills up over time. It takes a long time for it to fill up, potentially. And so you don't necessarily clear it overnight either. You don't necessarily drain it overnight. But anytime you tap, it's like having the tap of your rain barrel open so that there's water coming out, even though there's lots coming in. Because right now we've got a lot of emotional stuff coming in. And so it's one way of just kind of keeping that capacity so that you've got extra space with coping with whatever is happening now without immediately having an emotional reaction.
Very interesting, because it reminds me of things that I've done with my dog, and it's called T-touch, and it's that same idea of dogs have certain points, their ears and then the side of their neck. And my dog Rescue, highly strung when she came out of rescue, and they have a bucket, all dogs have a bucket of how much excitement or how much arousal they can take. It's just too much if you take a dog that's reactive out and they don't particularly like other dogs, and they see 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, the bucket gets full. So we can appropriate it or use that for other species, but I think as humans we very rarely sit and think, that applies to us too. We are also in that position where we find it, I think, a lot in situations where we might be triggered by other people. We had an awful lot of conversation in previous episodes about how we're working in offices, and now that we're at home and lots of our audience might be working from home, and they've got to deal with Zoom chats and Teams and all the other sorts of technology, and people are actually invading their space a little bit by having these video cameras on. So tapping, again, it could be something that you can do when you're in those situations where you're thinking, okay, this is not easy. Again, pub nights with family, anyone's going through all of that. I think that can also be quite valuable too. But again, I was just thinking about T-touch and about how we can do that with dogs as well, and tapping, and it's something we can apply to other people in our other important family members in our different families.
You can do surrogate tapping on behalf of other people. I've experienced surrogate tapping so much. Many people have done it for me, and I have some clients who ask me to surrogate tap on their behalf over and over again. So they pay me money to surrogate tap on their behalf, and they feel better. So I have some people who text me saying, this is how I feel. So I go, fine, and I tell them when I'm going to do it, and I tap for an hour, and then say, this is how I felt by the end. This is where I kind of felt things had shifted, and tell them that, and they usually say they agree. They feel like that too. So it is very, very powerful. That can be explained at a quantum physics level, by the way. It's hard to explain it otherwise, but at a quantum physics level, it is completely explainable.
I was going to say, synopsise it for us.
I know, but I don't know quantum physics expertise, I'm afraid. But all I can say is, if you've ever experienced it, you can feel it. You can really, really feel it happening.
Yeah.
Definitely. Without a doubt.
Interesting, isn't it? It's I think it's just that kind of paying attention to ourselves is so important. Again, like you were saying, Sarah, about the previous episode about being alone, and actually we talked in that episode, it's just gone up today, in fact at the time of recording this, it's now available to listen to, and we talked about that need to, that contact that you miss with people if you are on your own. And I certainly know that the amount of times that I'm hugging my dog has gone up an awful lot, and you've got, just that physical connection to other things and to other people is so important. And I think the longer that this situation goes on, and this awful kind of sense that, how long is it before we can hug somebody, then I think it's very important to pay attention to sort of, techniques like this, and we're connecting with ourselves as well. I think it's very good to be able to calm yourself, and
absolutely.
As we're all fighting, because I'm sitting looking at the other two and they're looking very chilled.
It occurred to me that I could be tapping as I talk to you, because that is actually what I do on Zoom normally. So if I do any kind of conversation with people, I'm usually tapping. Now you could be doing the surreptitious version with your hand, so that nobody would know you were doing this, but I actually do it in public. And whenever my book group meet, everybody in my book group knows how to tap, and I usually tap throughout my book group, and often people join in. And we're currently meeting once a week on Zoom. We're not reading books, we're just meeting because we want to meet, and it's common for me and or other people to be tapping throughout the whole thing, and we're just having the conversation that we would normally be having. Nothing is different, but if you're with people who know about tapping, it's a great thing to do, because you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it for them. It reminds other people that it's a normal thing to do, that it's completely, just a kind of we do it because it feels good, kind of calming, soothing thing. And actually sometimes people in my book group say thank you for doing that, because they feel like it's being kind of offered to everybody there, and that's usually what I do. I do it without thinking about it. I've been doing it.
Do each of the points mean something different? So no, you just do it in that pattern.
Well, you don't have to do it in this pattern. You can do it in this pattern, but actually you can just tap or rub or hold any of those points in any order.
Oh, okay.
So we have what we call your points, so that the points that your body likes. So the side of the hand is a very common one. The collarbone is very common. Top of the head is very common. But some people would rather touch rather than rub. So I have a friend who rubs her wrists like that. She doesn't, and she doesn't kind of want to tap. She puts her finger under her nose like that. She can actually feel all of that. And so when she's reading, she sits up in bed reading her Kindle, and she has her hand, she's doing all of this. So she's doing this at the same time as reading and feeling better. Now, that doesn't do it for me. I want to tap, but some people do feel that's, so it's a real question of what does your body like? So it's really worth experimenting and just having a little play and seeing what does your body like.
I have, this is kind of a weird one that I'm going to put onto the podcast now. I don't think I've spoken it, but I have mirror touch synesthesia. So I'm synesthesic in that I see colours and things and calendars and blah. I won't go into it in the detail because it's a whole other thing. But one of the things that I have is mirror touch synesthesia. So if my husband has a cut or a pain or something, I can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that helps me is actually to tap, and actually that and this can just interrupt that thought and that feeling. I know years ago he had a motorbike accident, and I had to get my neighbour to come round, who was a nurse, to change the dressing that he had. Not because I've got no phobia at all about blood or anything, it doesn't bother me at all, but it was that I felt it so badly that I was going to faint. Mm-hmm. That's how that affects me. So I had to just go into the other room and just sit and do something, and it was this and that, and I do that a lot.
I've seen you do that. I was going to say.
Yeah, that a lot.
You do that in public, and nobody's got. You just look thoughtful. Nobody knows.
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. But it's if I see something, and it's not necessarily Kenny. It can be any situation. I can just be next to somebody, and normally if I know them well, then I will feel this. You know, if they've hurt themselves, then I can feel that. So I have to kind of have an interruption, and it can be this. It can be that. So that's kind of how I use it, to just interrupt synesthesia. I have heard some research about that and how it's helped tapping with synesthesia, because mirror synesthesia can be quite disruptive.
It was interesting you should say that.
Generally.
It's very interesting you should say that, because the friend I was just describing who likes to stroke these points and do that is a synesthete. She's also has synesthesia. I don't think she has mirror synesthesia, but she certainly has when she listens to music and smells and days of the week and colours and all of that kind of stuff. So she does, she's definitely got synesthesia. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
You should mention all of that.
Yeah, that's exactly how I am. I days of the week have colours. There's the calendar thing that drives me absolutely crackers, to be frank. Everything else I can kind of cope with, but synesthesia certainly affects an awful lot of what I do. Certainly it's not always helpful when you're a designer and you have a particular aversion to a shade of green, because it just upsets me. And I can't really tell you why this particular shade of green bothers me, but it bothers me, and I can't, I just can't use that because there's something about it. So it's interesting. That is really interesting, because I think it's just an interruption to that thought, and it helps an awful lot. So an awful lot of that with me. This is quite common.
You should mention the interaction from the thought as well, because EFT evolved from something called thought field therapy, which is the idea that thoughts have energetic fields, that you can feel them, and you really, really can. More than most people, you can actually feel the energy of what's going on, and so you are presumably interrupting the unhappy kind of components and rebalancing your own energy system.
I think that's probably it. Yeah, I think it is. I certainly have practiced tapping when I've gone to when we were looking for a house, and I go into buildings, and if we go on holiday, it's just terrible. There's places where we stayed on holiday that we pay quite a lot of money for, and I would go in and just say, I can't, this is just too, this is not right, and I have to be prepared for that, and then have to find another way to interrupt that bit so that I can just do this or that or something. And often it's this. It's the fingers with me that I will tap so nobody knows, so that I can just go in and just think, okay, don't walk into this place and think, it's freaking me out. Just, and it can just be the sense of a building.
Yes.
And there's no other reason for that. And you've got to stay there for a week, and you're thinking, I know, I don't like this place at all. So and it's just those senses.
That category, yes.
Yeah, and that's quite hard to deal with sometimes. So there's lots of ways that you can use it every day, I think, with tapping.
But you can also, because there have been times in the past where I felt was particularly kind of in the middle of all the miscarriages, when I felt so depleted, so sort of hurt and sad. There have been occasions where I've tapped and tapped and tapped before I've met certain groups of people. And there was one of my favourites was choosing to feel wrapped in a warm pink cocoon. I can remember kind of choosing, this is what I want. I'm going to be wrapped in a cocoon. I'm going to be, I'm taken care of. And you can do all of that. So any kind of visualization or affirmations that you might think of doing anyway, you can tap at the same time, and that really reinforces and makes it that much more effective, which is lovely.
That's so interesting. And so it just suddenly just occurred to me that I subconsciously do this. It's
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
I
it's been-
really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been
Going
really
back
good.
every episode, frankly. Just literally.
Certainly you can. So the people who invented the simple tapping, what they suggest is that you graft tapping onto whatever else you're doing. So you just add it on. So any conversations you might be having anyway, particularly if they're less than happy, graft tapping on. Just add it in. Just keep doing whatever you were doing, and then just do some simple hand tapping and see what happens. And probably it will go better. It will go more smoothly. It'll be easier. The stuff, the emotions will flow rather than getting stuck. One way of doing it.
Great. That's fantastic.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. I really enjoyed this.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
No, thank you. That hour has shot past, hasn't it?
I know.
It has. Yeah, I can't believe it's been an hour.
And that's where we have to say goodbye to the delightful Rosalind. Thanks for staying the distance. We felt it was important not to break the flow of Rosalind's work. Now, don't forget that we're also on the Trinity of Facebook, Insta and Twitter. All the links can be found on our website, www.thefullstoppod.com, where you can also register for our newsletter so you can keep up to date with what we're up to. We would also appreciate if you could rate us on the platform you're using to listen to the podcast. The more ratings we get, the wider our spread and the more of our community we can reach. We'll put all Rosalind's details in the show notes. Now, if you would like to be a guest on the podcast or have a burning issue you think our community should be aware of, we've gone all official and have a form on the website that you can fill in to give us more details. Please don't forget, we love hearing from our audience. Do not hesitate if you want to drop us a line, even if it's just to say hello. And as always, it's important for us to let you know you are not alone.